Hey, my name is Maddie and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to share with you 5 practical benefits of covering your head and specifically your hair with a veil. So the first benefit of head covering is protection from hair breakage and hair damage. Head covering really helps to get your hair long and healthy, and if your hair already is long and healthy, it helps to keep it that way. This is super important if you are trying to grow your hair out or if you have really bad damage to your hair and you want to restore it. A lot of women struggle to maintain their hair length. When it gets to a certain point, it seems to just break off and they can't get it to grow past that point. And so head covering is a really great way to solve this problem because it helps to retain your hair length. In America and in the Western world, we are so used to wearing our hair down and having it exposed, but this really is not what is best for the health of our hair. Having our hair out and in the open leaves it vulnerable to so many types of damage. The first type of damage that our hair is exposed to is sun damage. And I know normally when we think about sun damage, we think about our skin, but our hair is actually an extension of our skin, and exposure to the sun can cause our hair to be dull, frizzy, dry, it can lose its color, and it also causes our hair to split off and break more easily. Exposure to UV rays can actually break down the outer layer of our hair strands, causing damage to the hair cuticle, which in turn makes it much more likely for our hair to break off. Our scalp is another part of our body that is protected by head covering. Just like the rest of our skin, our scalp can get sunburnt. And a sunburnt scalp can lead to hair loss, which I know that no woman wants to experience. The next thing that head covering protects our hair from is dirt, dust, and air pollution, all of which can inhibit hair growth, cause the hair to be dry, break off more easily, and there is actually strong evidence that air pollution is linked to hair loss as well. Wind exposure is also another factor that causes hair damage. Similar to the other types of damage, wind can make our hair dry, brittle, frizzy, tangled, and can cause damage to the hair cuticle. Covering our hair also just protects it from getting caught in things, getting hit, getting burned, or pulled, all of which lead to breakage. And the last point that I'll bring up, and I know this is not very common, but there are people who make a living off of cutting people's hair without their permission. A few years ago, I was watching a documentary by Refinery 29, and it was talking about how high the demand is for wigs and hair extensions, that there are actually people who will walk up to random strangers and cut their hair off and go and sell it, which completely terrified me. I know it's not very likely to happen, but it's just another reason to cover your hair when you're going out in public, just to make it less accessible to these people. The second point I want to make is that head covering makes life and daily tasks easier and more enjoyable. One of the most annoying things when you are trying to run errands or get things done is just your hair getting in the way. Whether your hair is short, medium length, or long, one of the most irritating things is your hair getting in your face. We try to combat this by tucking it behind our ears, but it does not stay there for long. And even just putting it in a bun and like putting a headband on, it can be really uncomfortable, and it also does not stay very well. If you do have longer hair, you know that it is so easy for it to get caught in practically anything. Another thing is if you have small children or infants or are around them, you know that hair is one of their favorite toys. They love to grab it, pull on it, and they do not want to let it go. So needless to say, head covering is so practical. Once you get the hang of it and figure out how to wrap your headscarf and keep it in place, it really is the best and most secure way to keep your hair out of the way. Moving on to my third point, head covering saves time getting ready. It takes so much less time to put your hair in a head wrap than it does to style your hair, especially if you're somebody who does a few different styles and then just gives up and puts your hair in the bun before you go out. It's just one less thing to worry about. 4, head covering helps with hair contentment. Just like with anything, the more that you look at your hair, the more likely you are to become bored of it. So many women, and I used to be one of them, are so just discontent with their hair. The desire to constantly change it, style it differently, dye it, and all of that. It can just be overwhelming and is never really satisfied. Covering your hair when you go out in public frees you so much from worrying about what it looks like and making sure that it stays in place and doesn't get tangled, and really helps prevent you from becoming dissatisfied with it. As women, I think that there is a really big inclination to want to make a drastic change to our hair, especially when we're going through a hard time, feeling a strong emotion, or just going through a major life change. We just tend to have this huge inclination to want to change our hair and do something crazy with it, something we would never normally do, or something that we have never done before. But these changes are often so bad for the health of our hair and can leave us with so much regret. You may argue and say, well, you can become just as dissatisfied with your head wrap as with your hair. And while that's true, it is so much better for your mental health and for the health of your hair for you to just change your headscarf or style it differently than it is to alter your hair. Whether that's by chopping it all off, getting a perm, dyeing it, bleaching it, or getting extensions. All of these things can be so damaging to our hair as well as to our confidence, and it affects us for such a long amount of time. Hair takes a long time to grow depending on what you do. You could be stuck with these changes for months and even years. The Bible says that a woman's long hair is her glory and that it is given to her by God. It is a gift from Him. And our hair is a huge part of what makes us feel beautiful as women. And I would argue that most women feel most beautiful when their hair is long and healthy. While long hair looks different on different hair types, the principle is still the same. It says in Proverbs 14 verse 1 that a wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. And often throughout the Bible, our bodies are referred to as houses, and as Christians filled with the Holy Spirit, our body is a temple for God. And so our hair is a part of that temple. So we want to do our best to take care of it and not take risks with it that could potentially lead to a lot of damage. We don't want to destroy our temple. We want to build it up. And so head covering is one way that we can take care of God's temple. And in doing so, we will reap the benefits. As a little side note, if you are married, your body is not your own. Your hair is not your own. You are one with your husband. 1 Corinthians 7 verse 4 says, "The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife." Your hair is a huge part of your husband's physical attraction to you. And so if you're married, I really encourage you to find out how your husband prefers your hair, what length he prefers it to be, and not to surprise him by doing anything drastic with your hair, especially if you know that it's something he does not like, the same way you would want him to ask you before he does something with his facial hair. It's just having consideration for him and knowing that your hair really does have an impact on your physical relationship. On the other hand, if you're not married but you want to be, I encourage you to just take care of your hair. Try to grow it out as much as you can. And if you're head covering, it will be so special on your wedding night. Your hair will be a present for your husband to unwrap. And my last point is that head covering protects us from other people's judgments and criticisms. So another reason that we often feel very inclined to alter our natural hair is because of other people's opinions about it. People judge us, stereotype us, criticize us, are jealous of us, and capitalize off of us based on our hair. If you have really long hair, you may have experienced somebody trying to convince you that you would look so cute with a bob, that you should just cut off all your hair. While they seemed genuine, their motive was actually out of jealousy because they were jealous of your hair and they didn't want you to have it. On the other hand, if you have a certain hair texture or color, you may have felt discriminated against or outcasted because of your hair. If this is something that you have gone through, I am so sorry. And I want you to know that God designed your hair perfectly. You don't need to change it to try to be good enough for anyone, to be accepted into any sort of group, or to attain a worldly beauty standard. You are uniquely beautiful and wonderfully made by God. And so those are all the benefits that I wanted to share with you about head covering. I will say though that when you decide to be obedient to God by starting to head cover and cover your hair as it's instructed in 1 Corinthians 11, there is so much peace that comes with it. God will give you the grace to be obedient to Him and to stay obedient to Him when it comes to this as you continue seeking Him. I'm not gonna lie, it can be very challenging to do this, especially if you live somewhere like America where women do not cover their hair, and it can be really easy to just get discouraged by other people's judgments of you, whether they're giving you a dirty look or criticizing you. But if you determine in your heart that you want to be obedient to God and that you're gonna do it no matter what, He really will give you so much grace and peace to do it. And just like anything else that you go through, like we get used to things, you will get used to looking different than everybody else, and God will open your eyes so that you can see how beautiful it is to honor Him in the way that you dress. There really is a beauty to it and a mystery to it. It's okay to not look like everybody else. Before I started head covering, I just thought it was so weird looking, and I really would have rather done anything else besides dress the way I do now and wear a head covering. But now that I've been doing it, I really think that there is such a beauty to it. And there's also, like I said, just so many practical benefits to it as well, especially just the amount of peace that I have felt since I have been obedient to God by head covering is just so much more than I ever used to have in my walk with Him. And God's peace affects you in so many practical ways. It affects your attitude, your behavior. It is so much easier to walk in the fruits of the Spirit with kindness and gentleness and everything when you have God's peace and the more aware you are of God's presence. It's beneficial to your mental health and to your relationships. It's beneficial to the gospel. Head covering really is just so practical and it is so profitable. Every command that God gives us is for our benefit. And so I hope that this video was helpful and encouraging, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.